Sure. Yeah, I started out as a technologist in the military and transitioned into schools. So I worked in K-12 schools for 25 years in California. Then I started with a group of people earlier this year, a nonprofit organization called the School to Business Association. And our mission with that organization is to really pursue research that fills gaps in research that we have in education around relevance, especially at the secondary level, junior high and high school. That'll be brought in my session is the research that we're doing around that. And then also building curriculum for high schools specifically so that they can use that curriculum to start business incubators in the high schools, allowing students to run real businesses for graduation credit, not just elective credit, and really allow at least a section of their students try to run businesses as their learning experience in high school.
Mm-hmm. Did they have that type of thing when you were at high school, Tim?
Interestingly enough, not really.
No, neither.
That's a big part of my background is this idea that I was just checked out of high school and high school wasn't relevant for me. And so I spent a lot of time not doing my homework and instead pursuing technology and things I was interested in. And I found that story to be true of a lot of people over my career, especially people in the technology field. And as I did, I got more and more curious about, who are these people? Like, how come so many people had that same sort of irrelevant experience in high school? And yet, even though we're sort of told that if you do the school things and you get good grades and you go to college, that you'll be a success, we had all of these people that I was meeting who had very successful lives, sort of despite their high school experience. And so that really kind of drove me to say, number one, as a chief technology officer in schools, my big overarching mission was to create schools that I wish I had when I was in school, that were more technology enabled, more relevant, more connected to the world outside of school. And then I started my path as a CTO, really doing that research to find out what about these kids that seem to be checked out and yet they do okay, or at least a lot of them do okay. Who are they? How do we re-engage them in the educational process?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're describing these kids that are effectively autodidactic, right? Like they just because they're not learning in the formal classroom doesn't mean to say they're learning. And in fact, they might prefer to be able to teach themselves and learn at their own pace, right? And so they tend to be, like you probably were, a fierce consumer of education, but in your own space and time.
Absolutely. And I think when we use the word relevance a lot in our research and in the work that we're doing, because relevance sort of encapsulates a number of different sort of subjects, right? It's like relevance involves interest. It's relevant to somebody if they're interested in it, if they're passionate about it, if their strengths lie in that area, it becomes relevant to them. It's also relevant if it has whatever it is you're pursuing has an impact in the real world to other people who you care about. Right. And so there's an element of relevance that comes with that. And so what we sort of have found as we've gone through this process of doing the research is that the classroom education in American schools is relevant to a subsection of students. Right. There's a subsection of students that are very interested in classroom learning. They love that method of learning. There's a subsection of students who are very interested in particular types of academically connected careers. And so they may not love school so much, but they do well in school because it's relevant to them because they've connected it to a career that they're very interested in or want when they become an adult. And so they do well in school because school is relevant that way. But we have what we would believe is about 60% of our high school students who have a lot of difficulty finding any kind of relevance in high school. And so those are the ones that we're particularly interested in focusing on and finding ways to get them connected and help them see that there are opportunities for them to learn throughout school that is relevant to them. But we have to, in order to do that, we have to get out of our normal sort of classroom-centric, teaching-centric mode. And so we talk a lot about teaching is different than learning. Often, teaching accelerates learning when the learner feels that what they're trying to learn is relevant. But often teaching it falls on deaf ears when the relevance isn't there. Yeah. And I think one of the big challenges in reforming schools is that many school reformers out there want everything to change about schools, right? They're like, it's just not working. But the reality is it is working for a subsection of students. And so we don't want to destroy the things that are working. We say that we're preparing students for college and career. And yet in reality, most of our students coming out of high school really aren't career ready. And so how do we sort of rectify that over a period of time without costing schools a bunch of money?
The $1 million question.
Right. Yeah, it has to be sustainable, right? That's my interest, is being in schools for 25 years. I know what the issues are. I know what's going to fly and what's not going to fly, for sure. And so we have some ideas, and we're looking for people to come alongside us and help us with developing that in a way that's sustainable for schools.
Yeah. Wow. CEC is where you'll find your community, your helpers.
Yeah, I'm excited about it, especially because what we're proposing is really built for small communities.